My childhood friend locked me on the rooftop to be drenched in the rain all night so that his goddess could smoothly get the recommendation quota for college. Despite having a high fever, I endured it and went to take the exam by jumping down from the building. But he accused me. You have such good grades. Can't you just let Delilah have it once? But he forgot that he was the one who once acted Coca-Cola lie with me, saying he wanted to go to the same university as me. Aurora, have you seen that video that's going viral on Douyin recently? I stopped working on the exercises and turned to look at my desk mate. What video? Christmas Eve is coming next month. The video says that if you watch the fireworks with the person you like, you can grow old together. I smiled and replied, it's not that easy to grow old together. If it were that easy to grow old together, there wouldn't be so many love-stricken men and women in the world. After saying that, I buried my head in working on the exercises again. Winning the gold medal in this competition can get me the recommendation quota for college, which is very important to me. I heard that Delilah invited Cedric to watch the fireworks. Aren't you on good terms with Cedric? Did he agree? My desk mate pulled my arm, being gossipy. My heart sank, and I subconsciously asked, who is Delilah? You were at the training, so you probably don't know. Delilah is a new transfer student, and she's been chasing Cedric very hard. The class bell rang, and my desk mate casually said, I'll tell you more after school. Cedric is the president of the student union. He has good grades and is handsome, so he has countless pursuers. Clearly, heading possibly. I should have been used to it, but I somehow felt flustered. After a class, I didn't hear a single word the teacher said. Before school ended, I saw Delilah. The last class was PE. On Wednesday, our class had PE together with Cedric's class. The PE teacher asked us to run a few laps and then have free activities. I've never been very good at sports. After running 3 laps, my face was red, and I was gasping for breath as I sat under the shade of a tree. Cedric changed into his jersey and then handed me a bottle of mineral water, with a smile in his eyes. Little Aurora, your physical fitness is really poor. Since we were kids, Cedric has always called me Little Aurora. He said this was his special nickname for me. I took a sip of water, hesitated for a while, and then asked, Cedric, is there anyone chasing you recently? His dark eyes darkened slightly, as if he was a bit displeased. Why are you bringing up that annoying Delilah? There are many girls chasing Cedric in school. But I didn't mention Delilah. After hesitating for a while, I looked at Cedric. Cedric. Actually. The next second, a sweet female voice interrupted me. Cedric, I like you. I looked in the direction of the voice. A cute and lively-looking girl was lying on the windowsill of the teaching building, shouting loudly with her hands in the shape of a trumpet. The warm glow of the evening sun fell on Delilah, and she was like a little shining sun. There are many people chasing Cedric, but she was the first one to be so bold and straightforward. Cedric, do you want to watch the fireworks with me? I subconsciously looked at the boy beside me. The outline of the girl was outlined in his amber eyes, and the girl in the distance had a smile in her eyes. The two of them only had each other in their eyes, just like the male and female protagonists in a novel. I held the mineral water bottle in my hand, involuntarily tightened it, but then weakly let it go. As if sensing that I was looking at him, Cedric turned around and muttered in a low voice, she's really thick-skinned. She's not half as cute as my little Aurora. As if to prove himself, Cedric reached out and pinched my face. I almost believed it. If it weren't to the fact that Cedric's ears were as red as a cooked shrimp and his fingertips were slightly trembling. His appearance reminded me of that midsummer night in the second year of high school. Cedric and I have been childhood friends for 18 years. But I've never seen him look so aggrieved. Little Aurora, why didn't you come to watch me play ball yesterday? He was drunk, grabbed my arm, and cornered me in a corner of the teaching building. Cedric's strength was great, and I was in so much pain that my eyes turned red. Cedric, what are you doing? When he saw me crying, he hurriedly reached out to wipe the tears from the corners of my eyes. Why are you crying? You laugh so happily with that Liang He. But you cry when you're with me? The midsummer breeze was impetuous and dry. But I could smell a hint of jealousy in Cedric's words. Cedric. Are you jealous? With a smile on my lips, I deliberately moved closer to him. Cedric's pupils contracted slightly, and the tips of his ears were so red that they could drip blood. As if making a certain decision, he asked softly, "Little Aurora, shall we go to the same university in the future and be together for a lifetime?" His words were like a small stone, stirring up countless waves in my heart. "Do you really know what you're saying?" I was a bit skeptical. Were these his drunk words? Or perhaps, what he said wasn't what I thought it meant. But Cedric's eyes were filled with starlight, and he stared at me seriously, holding my face and saying, "Of course I know." The sound of my heartbeat was like a drum, and I couldn't tell if it was his or mine. On that night, my feelings for Cedric changed. I can't remember how long it's been since I last saw Cedric, and next time I heard his name was when I was getting water in the cafeteria. Two girls walked by next to me, excitedly discussing something. "Have you heard? Delilah from class 4 ran into some hooligans. And Cedric, who never breaks school rules, actually fought for her." Of course I heard about such a serious matter. It seems both of them were taken away by the police. My head was buzzing. I didn't even care to deal with the scalding hot water that poured onto the back of my hand. I turned off the faucet and ran towards the police station. It was very cold in December. I didn't wear a coat and ran outside for more than 10 minutes. I even lost one of my slippers. But no matter how cold the weather was, it wasn't as cold as the sight of Cedric holding Delilah's hand, pinning her against the wall, and kissing her. Cedric wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and said in an absolutely possessive tone, "Delilah, no one can bully you in the future, including me." Delilah pursed her lips and asked suspiciously, "Cedric, do you really like me? Or is it about that Aurora?" I heard. Cedric's eyes darkened, interrupting what Delilah was about to say. "She's just a friend of mine. I've never liked her." "Really?" Delilah still didn't believe it. "Of course." Cedric tapped the tip of Delilah's nose, and then hugged her waist for a deep kiss. A layer of mist filled my eyes, and I was so blurred that I didn't even notice when they left. The scalded area on the back of my hand started to tingle, and my heart ached so much that it was a bit difficult to breathe. Yes. He had never said he liked me. We were just friends. But which friend would be jealous of the other, act coquettously and say they want to go to the same university, and talk about being together for a lifetime? Some words are said casually by the speaker, but the listener takes them seriously. I sniffed and sat down on a chair by the roadside. A piece of glass pierced the sole of my foot, and the wound was bleeding, mixed with dust and gravel. I thought, I never want to see Cedric again. I didn't expect Cedric to send me a text message asking me out on Christmas Eve. "Little Aurora, come out and play on Christmas Eve?" Somehow, the words "Little Aurora" stung my eyes. After thinking for a while, I replied to him, "You have a girlfriend now. We should keep our distance." After replying, I turned off the phone screen. I'm going to the competition tomorrow, and I don't want to be distracted by messy things. At noon, I saw that Cedric had sent 2 more messages. "I have something to tell you. I'll be waiting for you at Mingyu Square at 7:30 tonight. Delilah knows and she also really wants to meet you." What does she want to meet me for? I hesitated for a long time and didn't reply to him. At 7 o'clock in the evening, I still went to the appointment. As Cedric's childhood friend. The lights flickered. Cedric was leaning against the wall in a black overcoat. His eyes were downcast, and his brows were furrowed, as if he was in a state of entanglement. "Where's Delilah?" I walked closer and asked him. Cedric didn't answer. He grabbed my arm and walked towards the rooftop. As soon as we reached the rooftop, countless gorgeous fireworks bloomed in the sky, scattering around like stars. Cedric was backlit, and he directly stated his purpose. "Delilah is unbalanced in her studies. With her grades, she can't get into Peking University. This is her only chance. So, Aurora, can you withdraw from the math competition? You tricked me out. Just for this?" The blood in my whole body seemed to freeze. I looked at the person I had known for more than 10 years in disbelief. Why did he suddenly become so strange? Or perhaps I had never really known him. Cedric leaned against the balcony, looking helpless. You don't know how much Delilah has put into this competition. She can't sleep at night because of worry. It breaks my heart to see her like this. I've seen both of your grades. This year, the two of you are the most likely to win the gold medal. I was so angry, but I laughed. Cedric, have you lost your mind from being in love? Which participant in the competition has it easy? Just because we're friends. Do I have to give in to her? If that's the case, then I'd rather not be friends with you. Upon hearing this, Cedric grabbed my arm, his eyes full of impatience. Aurora, why are you so selfish? It's just a matter of giving in. With your grades, you'll definitely be able to get into college in the college entrance examination next year without any accident. Why do you have to compete with Delilah? He spoke so righteously. As if I was an unforgivable sinner if I didn't give in. A deep sense of powerlessness surrounded me. I finally realized that the scale of fairness in Cedric's heart had long unconditionally tilted towards Delilah. I refused with silence. After a long time, Cedric snorted, and his expression suddenly turned cold. Aurora, I was blind. I misjudged you. He left resolutely, and the door of the rooftop was slammed shut with a deafening sound. It started to rain inopportune. The rain mixed with my tears and splashed into my neck, making me shiver with cold. The rain got heavier and heavier. I took out a big apple from my pocket. When I was in primary school, our family was so poor that we couldn't even afford food because of my mother's medical treatment. On Christmas Eve, I sat in the corner of the classroom, enviously watching other children exchange apples and gifts. I could only lower my head and stare blankly at my old school uniform. Aurora, Merry Christmas Eve. Cedric took out a big, red apple from his arms and placed it on my desk. The apple was wrapped in a layer of transparent plastic paper with many blue flowers printed on it. But I don't have money to buy you a gift. I mumbled disappointed lie. Cedric stroked my hair and smiled brightly. It doesn't matter. I'll give you an apple every Christmas Eve from now on. He didn't lie. And he did it for 17 years. But I don't think I'll be able to wait for this year's. Watching the pedestrians on the road hurry to take shelter from the rain, I picked up the apple and took a bite. I don't know why. The apples I used to pick were sweet and crispy, but today's was sour and astringent. It was so astringent that my mouth went numb and my heart felt bitter. When I was about to leave, I found that the door to the rooftop couldn't be pulled open no matter how hard I tried. A bad thought lingered in my mind, and I shouted, Cedric, are you still outside? All that answered me was the ticking of the raindrops. Obviously, he had left long ago. I ran to the edge of the rooftop. Because of the rain, there were few people on the road. This section of the road was remote, and few people passed by. I hurriedly rummaged through my bag to find my phone. Big raindrops smashed onto the phone screen, and the phone page jumped crazily. It was an open-air area all around, with no place to shelter from the rain. I glanced at the phone's battery level. Unfortunately, there were only 3 bars left. I could only squat down and use my clothes to block the rain. The moment the call was dialed out, the phone screen went black and turned off completely. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, and soon my clothes were completely soaked. I shouted for a long time, but no one noticed. In the end, I could only huddle in the corner, shivering like a sieve. I couldn't help but think, did Cedric lock me here on purpose? Or was it an accident? But either way, he had hurt me. I would never give up the competition qualification. I didn't in the past, and I definitely don't want to now. After deciding to save myself, I got up and took a look. The building was only 4 stories high, and I could climb down along the drainage pipe. After taking off my coat, which had become too heavy after absorbing water, I grabbed the railing of the rooftop and carefully stepped down. It took me a long time to reach the 2nd floor. When the wind blew, my body couldn't help but shiver. Suddenly, my foot slipped, and I fell off the building like a kite with a broken string. It was the coldest time of winter. The wind blew the rolling shutter door on the roadside, making a loud noise. My limbs were stiff, and it was difficult to move even a little. I could only use my last bit of strength to curl up slightly. And finally, I passed out on the side of the road. After the competition ended, Delilah threw herself into Cedric's arms. Crying pitifully, "Cedric, I didn't finish a big question. I probably won't be able to get the gold medal this time." Cedric wanted to comfort her. But Delilah ran away with red eyes. I was still having a fever. And my head hurt terribly. When I limped past Cedric, he reached out and grabbed me. "Aurora." After his gaze fell on my pale face, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. "What's wrong with you?" For some reason, when I heard Cedric's voice, my temples throbbed even more. "Let go of me," I said hoarsely. Like an angry little beast. Cedric also got angry and raised his voice. "Aurora, what on earth are you making a fuss about? You have such good grades. Can't you just let Delilah win once? Do you know how uncomfortable it makes me feel to see Delilah crying?" I could no longer suppress the grievance in my heart. I raised the book in my hand and threw it at Cedric's face. "If she doesn't study well, why can't she work hard on her own? Why does she have to rely on others to give in again and again? Did I hold her hand to stop her from doing the last big question? Or did I force her to be distracted and fall in love? She's uncomfortable. So I deserve to be locked on the rooftop by you. Drenched in the rain all night. And almost frozen to death?" My emotions were too intense. And I coughed violently, bending over. It felt like there were blades cutting in my throat. "What are you talking nonsense about? When did I?" Cedric subconsciously reached out to pat me on the back. But I pushed him away forcefully as if by reflex. Cedric lost his balance and fell into the fountain pool. The pool water soaked his clothes. The noise of our quarrel attracted the attention of the people passing by. And they all looked over. Cedric lost face and shouted at me. "Aurora, are you crazy? If I ever care about you again, I'm a dog." I didn't bother to listen to his nonsense and left without any hesitation. Since that day, Cedric has never come to look for me again. I went to the hospital to ask who had brought me there that night. The doctor told me it was a tall and handsome young man. He left in a hurry that day and only left behind a school uniform jacket. Coincidentally, he was from the same school as me. While waiting for the intravenously drip in the ward, I stared out of the window, lost in thought. If no one had found me that day, would I really have frozen to death on the street? The result was too terrifying to imagine. On the day the results were announced, I lived up to expectations and won the gold medal in the math competition. At the same time, I found a letter in my desk. It was written by Cedric. It was an apology letter. I just took a glance and then casually threw it into the trash can. What was he doing? Giving a slap and then a sweet date, as if he thought he had me figured out? It was really ridiculous. If I were to forgive him after he had hurt me so heartlessly, I would be being a fool. The principal asked me to fill out a form and congratulated me on getting the guaranteed admission quota to Peking University. I was sincerely happy for myself. Even though I wasn't in the best state, the efforts I had put in would always pave the way for me. On the way to the hospital to continue the intravenous drip after asking for leave, I ran into Delilah. She put away her usual innocent pretense and grabbed my shoulder with a vicious look, pressing me hard against the tree. Her long fingernails almost dug into my shoulder. I hissed in pain but raised my eyebrows and smiled at her. "You lost," she sneered. "So what? The person you care about the most likes me now. He hates you. Aurora. You haven't won either. So Cedric is just a bargaining chip for you to win over me?" Delilah's words made me feel as sick as if I had eaten a dead fly. I couldn't understand that she could do such a thing just for a quota. Of course. Delilah curled her lips, about to say something, but a surprised cry came from not far away. "The teacher is coming. You wait for me." After Delilah warned me viciously, she turned and left. I looked at her back and thought Cedric was really pitiful. He thought love had come. But in fact, he was just a pawn being used. Neither of us noticed that Cedric was standing beside a tree not far away, listening to all the conversation. Delilah really didn't let me go. She uncovered my scars and let everyone torture me with their eyes. I learned about this when I went to each class to give a speech on learning experience. As the only student in the school to be guaranteed admission this year, The principal asked me to give a speech in each class to share my learning experience. I was standing on the stage giving a speech. And the teacher was waiting outside. The classmates in the class were whispering to each other, discussing something in a low voice. At first, I thought they were talking about me getting the guaranteed admission qualification. It wasn't until I gave a speech in the worst performing class in the school that they attacked me with mocking eyes and sharp words. "Hey, the one on the stage. I heard your mom is a mental patient and she hacked your dad, right?" A boy in the first row crossed his legs and said loudly, as if telling a joke. My hand holding the speech manuscript tight and instantly. And my ears were buzzing. The classmates in the class burst into laughter immediately. Only I stood there, feeling awkward and not knowing what to do. Only Cedric knew about this matter. Even if he was muddled, he wouldn't use this to make fun of me. The only possibility was that I had offended Delilah. And she had made my affairs public. Can't be true. These days, anyone can get the guaranteed admission qualification? Yeah. I heard mental illness is hereditary. Will she come to school and attack people when she gets angry? So scary. What's a mental patient doing in school? That's right. Get out of our class now. My feet seemed to be filled with cement. And I couldn't move. I murmured, "You're not allowed to talk about my mom." However, my voice was destined and to be drowned out in their discussions. Just then, Imadadolo sorry. A book hit the head of the person who had said my mom was a mental patient. That person seemed to be afraid of him and didn't dare to say anything. He lowered his head guiltily and continued playing games. The commotion in the whole class stopped immediately. The boy who threw the book stood up from the last row, kicked over the stool hard, put his hands in his pockets, and walked straight out of the classroom. After he left, no one in the classroom dared to mention my mom again. I choked up and finished reading the entire speech manuscript. Before leaving, I turned my head and took a look at this class. My mom is not a mental patient. Also, cutting social session. Learning to shut up is a kind of upbringing. When I returned to my class, I saw Cedric standing at the door, looking devastated, like the big black dog tied in front of my hometown. When he saw me, he almost ran in front of me quickly. Little Aurora. I checked the surveillance of that road section. It was Delilah who followed me and then locked. I interrupted him. "Don't call me Little Aurora. I find it disgusting." I really felt disgusted, both physically and mentally. He looked at my leg with a pained expression. "It must have hurt a lot when you fell that day, right?" "I'm sorry. I didn't know she was such a person. But I didn't hurt you. Can you forgive me?" Cedric looked at me with full of hope, wanting to get a little bit of forgiveness and soft heartedness from my face. But I didn't give him anything. Not even a glance. Yes. Both of us misjudged people. He couldn't see Delilah clearly. And I couldn't see him clearly either. I laughed mockingly, pushed him away, and stopped when I passed by him. "So? When you exposed my scars to others, weren't you hurting me?" Cedric pursed his lips, opened his mouth feebly, trying to explain something, but found that he couldn't say anything. "Cedric, don't appear in front of me again." The moment I passed by, I saw Cedric's shoulders trembling slightly. He regretted it. But Aurora would never look back. I overslept at home and hurriedly took a taxi to school. As soon as I entered the school gate, I saw the dean scolding someone. It was the boy who had thrown the textbook in the class. He had his back to me. He wasn't wearing a school uniform. Only a black windbreaker. "Caleb, you're late. And you didn't even wear your school uniform? Even if your dad donated several buildings to the school, you should at least pretend a little bit. Right? And the excuse of helping an old lady cross the road. Are you trying to fool a 3-year-old? I stopped in my tracks. I didn't know whether to move forward or stop. It seemed I had learned something big. Teacher. I overslept and was late. I lowered my head and walked over, feeling a little embarrassed. Caleb glanced at me. When the dean saw it was me, he smiled and said, "You've been busy with the competition these days. It's normal to be late. Go to class quickly." Then he pointed at Caleb. "You, run 5 laps on the playground." The young man beside me let out a soft tch. I bit my lip and looked at the dean. Teacher, you should treat all students equally. The dean's eyes swept back and forth between me and Caleb. Finally, heading fulfilledly. He punished both of us to run laps on the playground. Caleb had long legs and ran fast. Every time I wanted to open my mouth to ask him something, he would, as if on purpose, speed up when passing by me. He finished running in a short while and left. I had just recovered from a high fever. And after running 5 laps, I almost passed out. Here, a bottle of mineral water came into view. I looked up and saw it was Caleb. So he hadn't left. He had gone to buy water? Thank you. I took the water from Caleb. It was warm. After drinking some water, we sat on a bench to rest. Thank you for standing up for me that day, I said vaguely after taking a sip of water. Caleb pouted. Oh. I thought you were going to thank me for something else. What else? I felt a bit strange. Caleb had a faint scent of Lave and a laundry detergent. I seemed to have smelled it somewhere, but I couldn't remember exactly where. Verbal thanks? That's the last thing I care about. Caleb finished the mineral water in one go, raised his hand, and the mineral water bottle landed steady in the trash can not far away. Then what kind of thanks do you want? I can do anything. Come out and play games with me this weekend. I was stunned. Play games? But I don't know how. Caleb stood up, left with a "that's not my problem," and then left. On the weekend, I wore a light yellow padded jacket and stepped on snow cotton shoes to keep the appointment. When I saw Caleb, I smiled. He moved to computers to the restaurant's private room and wanted to play games with me. I was not know whether to laugh or cry. Caleb, are you serious? He turned on the 2 computers and said casually. You're a girl. You should go to places like bars less. I was stunned. I thought Caleb, being such a school bully, was careless and wouldn't notice these things. Unexpectedly, he was quite considerate. What are you standing there for? Come here. I'll teach you how to play. Okay. Caleb was really good at playing games. His long fingertips were tapping rapidly on the keyboard. On the contrary, I died again and again. He said the hero he was playing was a jungler, but his teammates complained that the jungler seemed to have settled in the middle lane. Seeing that I was a newbie, the opponent taunted me in the all chat. Caleb then crazily targeted him. In just 10 minutes, that person's record changed from to 0 to 7. For the first time in so many days, I felt happy. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was a call from the hospital. Wait a minute, I said to Caleb. He nodded to indicate that I could answer the phone. The moment I heard the news that my mom had an accident, I rushed out of the private room crying. But when I went downstairs, I couldn't get a taxi in a hurry. At this time, Caleb put a helmet on my head and took me on his Ducati. I had never ridden a motorcycle before. I had seen many videos of people getting killed in motorcycle accidents on the news. My leg trembled when I got on the bike. Caleb comforted me softly. It's okay. If you're scared, just hold on to me. I replied with an, and reached out to grab both sides of his padded jacket. Sitting on the back of Caleb's motorcycle, I couldn't help but want to cry. My mom was beaten by my stepfather when he was drunk that year, and he also owed a lot of debt. She was driven crazy by those debt collectors. Most of the time, she was sober and only had an episode when she ran out of medicine. If you want to cry, just cry, I heard Caleb say as we sped along. I won't cry. He didn't say anything more. After arriving at the hospital, the doctor told me that the new nurse was too busy and forgot to give my mom her medicine. Fortunately, the doctor called me. When my mom heard my voice, her emotion stabilized. After my mom fell asleep, Caleb was still standing at the hospital entrance. He had his back to the hospital gate and had been waiting for God knows how long. Oh, you found the young man who brought you to the hospital that day? The doctor mentioned casually when telling me about my mom's condition. I was stunned for a second. After reacting, I pointed at Caleb outside in surprise and asked, You mean he's the one who brought me to the hospital that day? The doctor nodded. When that young man brought you here, he stayed up until it was almost dawn. But you didn't wake up. Finally, having fulfilled Rayad's, he left after answering an urgent call. I turned my head to look outside the hospital. After a long time, I curved my lips. So when he said, "I thought you were going to thank me for something else that day," this was what he meant? He saved my life. But he didn't say anything. During the winter vacation, Caleb always went to the hospital, using the excuse of coming to me for tutoring. The backyard of the hospital was covered with white snow. When you stepped on it, it would make a creak creak sound. I've liked stepping on it since I was a child. Caleb was walking behind, carrying my single shoulder bag. He was also childish, stepping on my footprints as he walked forward. "Caleb, my mom's mental state has been really bad recently. I'm so worried," I said, leaning against the pillar of the pavilion, unable to help worrying about my mom's condition. "Your company is the best medicine for her. Don't look so sad. Let me tell you a ghost story?" I was sad. And he wanted to tell me a ghost story? I really wanted to pry open Caleb's head to see what was in it. Caleb started telling the story on his own. There was a little bear walking at night, and suddenly its butt felt cold. It looked back and its tail was gone. The little bear was so scared that it broke out in a cold sweat. Then a voice came from the air. Caleb looked at me with an expression like, "Guess what?" and asked me, "What do you think it was?" I thought for a while and said, "Did the tail fall off by itself?" "Wrong." The voice said, "I'm the tail-cutting ghost." Me, later. My mom always asked me, "Is Caleb your boyfriend?" I told my mom with a smile that he wasn't. My mom said, "I don't believe it." Then she took out a key pendant knitted with wool from under the pillow and asked me, "What about that kid from the Cedric family? Why doesn't he come to see me with you? Last time he said he liked the pendant I made. So I made one for him too." My hand holding the water paused, and I almost scalded myself. The doctor said my mom was mentally confused and sometimes could only remember one or two people. The last time she saw Cedric was during the summer vacation. I thought she had already forgotten about Cedric. I suddenly hated Cedric a bit. My mom remembered him like a family member. But he casually told others about my mom's condition as if it were a joke. No one knew how much I wanted to tear the mouths of those who laughed at my mom when I heard them. After a long silence, I told my mom, "Cedric won't come again." My mom seemed not to have heard me, and was smiling and stroking the key pendant in her hand. On New Year's Eve, there was a heavy snowstorm outside. Red lanterns were hung on the roadside, and the Spring Festival Gala skit was playing on the TV in the hospital. I was looking at the message Caleb sent me on my phone. "Shall I bring dumplings today?" I replied helplessly, having so felt my "Oh, Caleb, can't you see it's snowing heavily outside?" And he called me directly. "Don't say it's a snowstorm. Even if it's knives falling from the sky, I'll come." Annoying guy. No. Before I could finish speaking, Caleb hung up the phone first. I waited for a long time, but Caleb didn't come. Looking at the snow that was getting heavier and heavier outside, I was really worried. When I went downstairs to wait for him, I saw Cedric. I don't know how long he had been standing there. His eyebrows and eyelashes were covered with snowflakes. When he saw me, he was like a puppet that had gained intelligence, with a glimmer in his eyes. He was holding a bouquet of flowers and walked quickly towards me. "Little Aurora, I broke up with Delilah," he said. His eyes were full of desolation. It seemed he had just shaved, and his faint blue stubble was showing. I didn't say anything. Only now did I realize that I seemed to no longer care what Cedric was going to do. In the past, I liked him and cared about every look and every move of his. But for Delilah's sake, he hurt me badly. I don't like Cedric anymore. What he does is no longer important," he said. I thought for a long time and realized that actually, I don't like Delilah at all. "Aurora, have you noticed that you and Delilah look quite alike?" "Like me. Delilah has a baby face. But their personalities are at two extremes. At that time, you were busy with the competition and ignored me. I was actually very flustered when Delilah confessed to me. She kissed me. That day, she was wearing the white knitted vest that you like to wear the most. When she took the initiative, all I could think about was you. Aurora, I found out that I like you. I was bewitched at that time. So I made you give up the competition. I was the one who told Delilah about Andy's matter. But I didn't expect her to have such a big mouth. Cedric seemed to be pouring out words like beans, choking back sobs as he said a lot. I interrupted him. Cedric. I'm not like her. To my surprise, Cedric would confess to me. If I had heard him say he liked me before, I would have been so happy that I couldn't sleep all night. But now, hearing this, I felt nothing. And I even wanted to laugh a bit. Cedric gave a bitter smile. Yeah. You're not. Aurora. Can't we really go back to the way we were before? I promise that nothing like that will happen again. Please forgive me. Okay? As if afraid I wouldn't believe him, he clumsily raised his hand to swear. I sneered. The panic on Cedric's face was hard to hide. He couldn't help asking. Are you with that Caleb? I've inquired about him. He often fights and has a bad temper. That kind of person is not in the same league as you at all. He deliberately emphasized the words, that kind of person, with contempt and disdain in his eyes. I retorted. If I'm not in the same league as Caleb, am I in the same league as you? Moreover, he's gentle, attentive, and knows how to respect others. When I mentioned Caleb, I couldn't help but think of the way he usually made me happy. Cedric frowned and asked eagerly, so do you like Caleb? Of course. He saved me the night I almost died on the roadside. He helped me out when I was mocked by my classmates. And he's been with me during the time when my mom had an accident. I questioned him. What about you? What have you done? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I just wanted you to focus all your attention on me. Cedric was crying like a child who had done something wrong. His lips were trembling as he murmured, I'm sorry. Little Aurora. I'm sorry. Cedric. Do you want me to forgive you? I slightly raised my eyes and asked him. Yes, Kelin Sofil Boryevsai. Even if you asked me to jump off a building right now. Cedric said without any hesitation. I looked into his eyes and said resentfully. I don't want you to jump off a building. Nor do I want you to be drenched in the rain all night in the cold winter. I just wish she could have chosen me firmly at that time. I don't need him to do anything for me. Some injuries, once caused, are irreversible. No matter what he does for me now. The pain I suffered before was real. Cedric's smile froze on his lips. He was silent for a long time, as if he understood what I meant. Finally, having fulfilled my obsession, he looked at my face with a half-crying, half-smiling expression and said, Okay. I understand. Durish. Happy New Year's Eve. After Cedric left, I took out my phone and called Caleb. Its familiar ringtone rang not far away. When I looked up, I saw the tall and slender figure standing in the wind and snow. It was Caleb. He was standing not far away. There was a lot of snow on his black coat. And he was holding a thermos bucket in his arms. I felt subconsciously embarrassed. I rubbed my red frozen nose and quickly walked to his side, taking the thermos bucket from his hand. And I asked in a very low voice. When did you come? He looked at me calmly and said. Just came. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm almost frozen to death. Let's go upstairs. Oh. It's good that he didn't hear. After my mom had dinner and went to sleep, Caleb and I took a walk on the road. He was holding an umbrella. When we passed by a rarely visited alley, Caleb suddenly reached out and pushed me in. There was no light in the alley, and it was pitch black. My hand was grabbed and pinned against the wall. You like Caleb? Of course. He was the one who saved me the night I almost died on the roadside. Caleb's voice sounded in my ear. His hot breath fell on the side of my ear, repeating word by word what I had said to Cedric. There was a boom in my head. I wished I could dig a tunnel and hide in it. So he had heard everything and had been pretending not to know. Caleb. Let me go. Listen to me explain. I suddenly felt glad that there was no light in this alley. If there was, Caleb would surely see my face as red as a monkey's, but Caleb chuckled. His smile charming and bewitching. I'm taking it seriously. If you explain, it's like you're breaking up with me. I don't agree to that. Knowing his feelings for me, my heart warmed. Even though it was a snowy winter, I didn't feel the cold at all. Caleb. Chase me then. I've never been chased by anyone before. Some people wrote love letters to me, but Cedric rejected those boys in the name of being my brother. Thinking about it this way, I think Cedric is really a jerk. Okay. Then can I kiss you first? Just one kiss. In the darkness, I couldn't see Caleb's face clearly, but I could clearly feel that his eyes were shining. I have no doubt that if he had a tail, his little tail would be wagging like a helicopter propeller. I was about to say something when my face was suddenly held in his palms. Caleb's cold lips landed on mine without warning. When I was in college, Caleb was repeating his senior high school year. He boasted that he could get into the same university as me in just 1 year. I just smiled and didn't say anything. At the high school classmates reunion, when my old friends learned that Caleb was chasing me, I also heard some things about Cedric from them. Cedric didn't perform well in the college entrance examination and somehow picked up bad habits like drinking and smoking. In less than a year, he got lung cancer and was lying in the ICU, sipping millet porridge. I didn't want to hear this. I lowered my head and looked at my phone. In just a short while, Caleb had sent more than a dozen messages. I'm coming to find you. Send me your location. I'll pick you up. You promised to tutor me. Although it was said to be tutoring, Caleb didn't even bring his books. Half a year later, I didn't expect that he really got into Peking University, the private college next to it. He threw himself into my arms wrongfully and said, I really studied very hard. I laughed at him, saying that life wasn't like a novel, and there weren't so many geniuses. As a result, he got angry, turned around, and went home to inherit billions of family property.